So hello and welcome to another segment of Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition. My name is Elisa William, and today I have the pleasure to be talking to Director of the Orange County Office for the Aging, Anne-Marie Maglione, and Professor of Psychology and Director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary's College, Dr. Larry Force. So welcome. Larry, you want to kick us off?
I do. Thank you, Alyssa, for facilitating this and making this happen. And welcome to everyone. We're glad to be here. One of the takeaway messages from the very beginning of our videocast, Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition, is that although the world is different, the one thing that's constant is that we are available. As you can see, that there are representatives, from different agencies and different organizations, and they're here at the table, literally and figuratively. We're now into the midst of season 2. One of the things we wanted to talk about today is an overview and then talk about Onward, what the rest of the season looks like. Before I introduce Anne-Marie, I want to be very clear. Season 2 would not be possible without the work and support of Steve Newhouse, the County Executive of Orange County, and Anne-Marie Maglione, the Director of the Orange County Office for Aging. When we initiated this season 1, 10, 15 videocasts ago, if not more, we knew that we had to do something because the world was different. We had all this content knowledge and we wanted to be present. So we launched season 1. From the day that I had the first call with Anne-Marie and Tim Murphy from Adult Protective Services to the next call with Dr. Jerry Abatiello and Alyssa being involved, was 11 days from the day of concept to the day we launched. And that's a real testimony to the team that's been working through all of these initiatives. 11 days from, what do you think about this, to, good morning, we are here with elder abuse awareness. So Anne-Marie, I'd like to again acknowledge the work that you and Steve and the County of Orange have done to make this possible. And I'd like to turn this over to you. And, at that point, then maybe we could just talk a little bit about where we've been. At a tremendous episode. We were talking about this prior to coming on, about the way that the veterans presented themselves last week. It was just outstanding. And we could talk a little bit about that and also talk a little bit about next week. We're very excited that Lori Labai is going to join us from Alzheimer's Speaks. So Anne-Marie, please.
Before you start, I think anyone who's watching this should have a little warning. What Anne-Marie is doing with driving and on video is not something we suggest for any people who are watching.
Yeah, we do not support this. I actually just pulled over, so I am not driving right now. But yes, I am en route to another meeting. But good morning, and thank you for tuning in. This is such an important topic, and it's unfortunate that it's an important topic because we have to deal with this. Elder abuse is real, it's rampant, it is growing, and it's the dirty little secret. And we have pulled together the best of the best people in the community to help us address this. And I'm really proud to be part of this coalition. The only way you eradicate anything is through education and awareness, and that's exactly what this coalition aims to do. So we have various guests that come on and talk about things. And as Dr. Force said, we had the experts from the veterans last week, and it was wonderful because again, it affects everyone. And I think we can't stress enough that the people, there's different types of abuse, and to talk about it does not make you weak. To ask for help does not make you weak. Quite the opposite. It's a hard thing to do sometimes, especially if a family member is involved, and oftentimes a family member is involved. We're going to keep doing this because our goal is to talk ourselves out of business so that we don't have to have this anymore, and there is no more elder abuse. But it's always, if you see something, say something. My office is here to help. It's New York Connect's number, which is 845-615-3710. We work very closely with Orange County Adult Protective Services, which is 845-291-2800. If you suspect something, you can call It's anonymous. No one needs to know. And best case, it's nothing. But let's err on the side of caution and do it. So we have, like I said, we have many, many people that are part of this coalition. I'm proud to be part of it. It's also, I was watching TV yesterday, and ABC, their ABC News is going to be doing a whole segment on loneliness and isolation with older adults during COVID. That's a big part of elder abuse, is loneliness and isolation and self-neglect. So, you know, I encourage everybody to look at that. All of these tools just help. So I think we are just a tool in the big toolbox, and we're happy to be here. So,
You know, and as you were talking, the thing that came to mind is when going back to that really successful conference that we held at the conference that you and Sandy and myself and the hospital were involved in, and we had 500 people. We had 500 people come to that. And one of the things that we talked about is the idea of, you know, the idea of empowerment. You know, the theme was age loudly. Sandy did a remarkable job about creating a theme song for it. Matter of fact, we used that theme song in our Age Loudly podcast. And it was a way of encouraging people to not only survive, look, you have a choice, learn to cower or learn to fight back. And we don't mean physically fight back, but we're really talking about the idea of attitudinally fight back, you know, and how to make that possible, you know. And I think that we've done a wonderful job, and I mean this sincerely, of lighting people up, of letting them know that, look, you don't have to do this alone, no embarrassment, no shame, we get it, everything's confidential, and we're here for you.
That's true. And, you know, Larry, one of the things that you always say is just because you're retired doesn't mean it's over. And it's not only fighting elder abuse, but also living your life to the fullest. And this is something that can really empower you, because when you get to a certain age, all of a sudden you find people looking at you differently. There's a stereotype. You're can be treated differently unless you don't allow that. And we're not allowing that. You know, I had, you know, you talk about how the pandemic has made things worse here. Being isolated and not being able to go out and mix and mingle, go to your senior clubs or wherever else you go, bars to hear music, makes people want to do things like pick up the phone when they normally wouldn't. As an elder law attorney, and I had an old client come in. By old, I mean former client, and had terrible story. You know, she was looking for protection, change in her powers of attorney and things like that, because someone had called her and and this is like an age-old scam. You won the lottery, and we just need you to pay some of the taxes that go along with that. Now, we know here in like New York, for example, and probably all over, if you win the lottery, they take out your taxes automatically, okay? And here, she said, it was a large enough amount, and she said, okay, I'll pay some of the taxes. And this kept going on for ages. I said, now we need a little more, a little more. $500,000 out of her savings. Yeah. So this is something we have to watch out for more while we're going through this stuff. People are panicked, people are lonely. All the stuff that we have here is, for most people, are just more difficult for seniors. Often don't get around as much as others do. Often don't have that same support. So what we're doing here is very, very important, even if it's just to remind people, hey, you know, this isn't over. Stand up, be yourself, have a great life. And we can all do that. We can all do that.
You know, my friend and colleague, Dr. Jeffrey Kahana, who runs is also a director of our Center on Aging and Disability Policy. His parents are really world-renowned gerontologists, and Jeffrey's very modest about it. But as you were talking, and from where you're sitting, and then Jerry, you know, from where Jerry's sitting, and Anne-Marie, and Alyssa, and all of us, Danielle, all of us. One of the things that Jeffrey's mother always says is that everybody brings a skill set to the table. There's zero way we would have been so well received locally, statewide, and nationally for the message that we're delivering if it wasn't for all of our fingerprints. You know, I have a particular perspective. You reference it. Somebody wants to talk about law. There's nobody else that I'm referring people to than you, okay? Because of the fact that you really, not only are you familiar and you can swim in the land of the legalese, but you are a compassionate advocate. I'm not just saying that because of the fact that you're on the phone or on the video cast. I mean, the work that you do through the Alzheimer's Association, the work you do, you know, getting out there and writing on a regular basis for the Times Herald Record in the over 55 section about, you know, senior rights. You really should be, you should take a bow, Sandy, because of the fact you really do a nice job. And I'm not kidding. And then there's Dr. Jerry Abatiello, longtime friend. Yes, I'm from Mount Vernon. Yes, she's from Yonkers. We go back a long way. Not from there, but we often talk about it. And Dr. Jerry has come to the table with a presence that is so soothing, comforting, and realistic. And last time we got together for season 1, Dr. Jerry put together a public service announcement that we thought had so much value, but they weren't just glips, that we put them on as meditative, and Alyssa can reference that later as well, as meditative, you know, vignettes. And now we're coming back for season 2. And after this call, when we're, you know, offline, we're going to be talking again about creating those same types of things for the next season. So Dr. Abatiello, maybe you could just talk about, from your perspective, not only the work that's being done here, but where do you think we are? Where do you think people are during this completely up, you know, you always reference the kaleidoscope. This is really a kaleidoscope time, isn't it? Where people are just, it's just, things are just changing, figures are changing, mores are changing, mannerisms are changing, everything is changing and will change probably for the rest of our lives. You know, I don't know, will we go back to some type of rhythm of a familiar pattern? Yes. But some things, I'm not sure if they'll ever come back. You know, the traditional handshake, you know, the hugging of each other, you know, randomly. I mean, I don't know. So, Jer?
Well, I mean, one of the concerns that I have is there's a lot of talking on resilience these days. And what has to happen as we age is to get a better sense of what it was that actually helped us be resilient. I don't think the things like shaking hands is going to change. It's a human condition we want to touch. But that is one of the things that is in that perspective where people are not only alone and in a room, but they don't have a physical touch in humanity, which I think is a major, major loss. It's a loss in aging in general, where you don't have necessarily the same kind of support if you're living even in an assisted living or your own home, your own apartment. Things change. But as I'm hearing how people are bringing skills of how not to let things happen to each of us that we aren't giving consent to. And I think that simple example that Sandy just mentioned, you know, that we shouldn't be giving consent without, you know, recognizing what it's about. And the notion also about how we can reconstruct who we are and what is our loss about, and you know, what is it that is inside us that has to grow and be pulled at the seams in ways that we haven't done before. The notion of a kaleidoscope for me is that in that kaleidoscope with that lens, all those pieces, the pieces of our life, COVID, families, fear, love, all of it is in the place. We're not going to remove or put anything new in, but we are inviting people to look a little differently at it, maybe with the help of some significant person, some spiritual concept, recognizing we're part of a whole. But the idea that, there is another way to look, and we each have to individually find it, or at least find somebody who could help us look a little differently.
We had the veterans on last week, as we mentioned, and Alyssa's Hudson Valley Healing Center with Mental Health of America, Duchess, are involved in a mild hyperbaric chamber program to deal with PTSD for veterans. It's great. And anybody that is a veteran, knows a veteran, they need to be able to become aware of this program and connect with Alyssa and Andrew O'Grady. But here's the story. As you were talking, I was thinking about, what happens if the person does show up, the person that's been abused in your private practice, and you do present to them just what you've talked about, this idea of the not accepting, this idea of, the losses of aging. But then I started to think, the connection with the veterans is the PTSD suffered by family members. There are family members that know that one of their siblings or grandchild is really being very abusive financially, morally, whatever, to a grandparent or to a parent. And they're witnessing this and they feel so helpless because they're experiencing kind of like the rippling effect of this elder abuse. It's not a direct, hit, literally and figuratively, but they're feeling it as it ripples out through the family system. What would you recommend to the family member that's witnessing this, knows that it's happening, but is held captive by the emotional climate that the offender has created in the family? Might be fright, might be fear, might be feelings of regret. One of the things Anne-Marie and I have found throughout all of this, some families don't want to raise their hand and talk about the fact that they're being abused by a family member because they're concerned about the legal ramifications from Sandy's world, or the police ramifications. So maybe you could just talk about that for a minute. The family member that comes to you that knows that it's going on and doesn't know what to do.
Well, the notion of knowing what's going on and not giving some words to it, that keeping it a secret, is probably not helpful. The idea that we know something is happening. And so people might need some ways of recognizing this is not normal, this is not okay. And so I do believe that we have to call it something. In fact, I was speaking with someone on the phone just last night who's actually fearful of abuse. And part of it is we make up nice things about what the person actually means. And we start justifying the behaviors. And even if we only do a little bit of it, even if we only say, I know this is hard, and I know that you don't quite know what to do with your fear or frustration, but we care about you, and this isn't good for you as the abuser any more than it's good for me as your mother to watch you do it to my mother. But there has to be some way that we give words to it, Years ago, I was talking with a mother who had actually broken her little daughter's arm. And in a dialogue, I said, I need you to sit and listen. And so as the person got more accelerated because I was addressing it, I just kind of went to my own peaceful place. And then in that said, I know you're very frightened and I want to hear about it. I want to hear about your pain. But right now, what you're doing is not okay. So I don't know if that helps at all, but part of it is we do have to be recognizing the person who's doing it has their own reason, but it's not reason enough to justify behavior that's hurtful. We can look at it's more than it looks like. You know, I don't understand all this, but I'm willing to have a dialogue or call somebody in or get some help. But I can't let this just be our secret.
And I think the point's well taken. I mean, the fact is that, you know, Anne-Marie representing an agency, Tim representing an agency, you know, I think one of the clear messages that has been presented throughout this is that you don't have to be in the room to witness it. You don't have to be in the house to hear it. You don't have to be in the neighborhood to hear about it. And the fact is that if you feel as though that something's not right, something's not, and you just want clarification, call that New York State Connect number, call the Adult Protective Service number. They're completely confidential, because you might have questions that you're thinking about, how do I get an answer? And Anne-Marie and staff, Tim and staff, they're prepared to answer you. So I know that I think Anne-Marie has left the meeting because of the fact that she was en route to another meeting and she was able to safely pull over to engage with us. But the fact is that our intent today, and we thank her for joining us, because we know that, you know, she's in the middle of connecting dots with other meetings. But the message today is where we've been and the idea of Onward. Danielle,
Yes.
you're part of this team.
Yes.
Give us a comment about where you sit, not only developmentally, you know, the fact is that you're in young adulthood and you're witnessing this. And you brought your skill set to the table of helping us logistically, along with being part of Alyssa's team, to make this happen. But what's your comment?
I think it's a great idea, especially being an OT and knowing and working with seniors and making sure that everyone is treated the way they should be treated. And it's very important because elderly abuse is huge, and the fact that we can be there to help everybody who can't. Sometimes it kind of reminds me of like bulliness. So a lot of times if you're being bullied, you're afraid to like speak out and protect yourself. And the fact that we're helping everybody out and giving them an outlet of realizing that there is help out there.
Yeah, and I think your point's well taken. A number of years ago, students in my class did a paper on mean girls. Mm-hmm. And that's a phenomena that typically happens in adolescence. But their focus wasn't on mean girls in adolescence. Their focus was on mean girls in nursing home settings. And the fact is that some of those things developmentally travel right across the lifespan. Oh, yeah. Alyssa, you've done a remarkable job of stitching all this together as a moderator. But before we turn it back to you in that role, talk to us about your impressions. You've been present for all of this. What's your take, your observation?
Well, thank you. The biggest impact that this podcast has had on me was back when we did season 1 in the beginning, and listening to how every week there was like a new scam or a new way to take advantage, and not realizing how many people in our community, in our state, and in the nation that were affected and taken advantage of. Even what Sandy shared about a woman being, you know, I guess taken advantage of with $500,000. I mean, that's unbelievable that scams like that are going on. And I do feel so many times that people aren't coming to the table. They're not speaking up for themselves because there is that fear of your family leaving you. And then what? You know, is our current situation worse than what could happen down the road if I do speak up and say something for myself? But I think by bringing light to it, and as we have caregivers and care workers and agencies and attorneys come on the podcast, we're able to have that space to talk about it and to feel safe and to realize that, you know, you're not alone.
Love it. All right, well, I think, you know, we've accomplished what we intended to do, which was to review where we've been and to talk about where we're going. Sandy, Jerry, any final comments? I think Sandy, Jerry.
Yeah. Handing me the mic, great. something you're always afraid to do, but I appreciate it.
But the beauty now is we have a mute button. Alyssa, don't let go of that mute button.
Yeah, no one's been successful with that with me. Anyway, yeah, a couple of things. First, having Danielle here, it made me think about what you often say, Larry, that how what we do is not only going to affect senior population, but also the following populations, the younger people, because getting old is something that people start worrying about pretty young in their lives. They look at what's going on with older people and say, okay, I don't want to be in that position, whether it's health or whether how you're regarded by society, whether the social thing, all of that. And we want an entire population to be able to look at their future and feel, yeah, this is going to be great. Okay. And this is how I feel now. And a lot of the people who are involved in what we do feel that way, feel like, hey, we can do this. We can make this time great. So it's not only seniors, but it's others, children and their children's children. And you talked about, Larry, this being a revolution. I think it really is. I think it really is. No one should be afraid of getting older because of things that they can't control. We control our lives. We control our lives. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think it would, if, before we sign off, we could go over what's coming up in our podcast, so people know what to look forward to. That's all I got to say. Mike,
Okay,
back to
so
you.
we have next week, and I like to take it really at a week at a time, but next week we have Lori Labai from Alzheimer's Speaks. That's going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we
And
also
by the way, this is one of the things that I see in my practice, and probably all of us do, is the biggest fear, one of the biggest fears that people have about growing older, because sometimes, a lot of times, Alzheimer's, all other kinds of dementia are looked at as one of the things we can't control, haven't done anything about in terms of cures. I mean, look, COVID, we have a vaccine for in a year. Why don't we have a vaccine for Alzheimer's? I don't know. But that's one of our biggest fears, because it affects so many people. So I'm really glad we're having that coming up.
So we have, thank you, Cindy. We have Lori Labai, we have a representative from a national network, and we have 1 to 2 people from the political arena that I don't want to identify yet because we're just confirming their schedules. But you'll be able to find additional information on our website, which is the Elder Abuse Awareness Coalition.com, that Alyssa will give you information. So Jar, thank you, Cindy. Jar, any final comment?
I think that we've had kind of a multi-dimensional approach, but we recognize it's hard to be the person who is receiving the elder abuse, and not simple, because we don't know how people have lived their life and what their own psyche is telling them. And we also know that the caregivers are being overwhelmed. And we don't even know about the children that you refer to, Sandy, as observing how to parent your parent. And in this time, I certainly don't want to see little children and teens watching that abusing is one of the things that's acceptable. So I think it's a grand thing that we're not letting this go. We need to give it words and saying, okay, this doesn't equal you having no self-control.
And in fact, as you're presenting that, Jerry, I'm thinking about it. We're doing, which we have to feel great about. We're doing what we're encouraging other people to do. step up, look at it, talk it, get it into the focus, and let's move it forward. So thank you, everyone. And Alyssa, at this point?
Yeah, well, just to remind you, and thank you for joining us as we've been talking about our overview and onward. You're not alone. And if you need to reach out for yourself or somebody that you know, you can always call New York Connects at 845-615-3710. And thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition. And if you want to watch this program again or share it with friends, log on to the Digital Resource Center on our website, elderabuseawarenessvirtualcoalition.com. Hope you join us again next week.
Wonderful.